Yeah, I smoke every day. Yeah, I'm high every single day, but I don't have a problem. There's that denial. But also there is a blanket denial among advocates of marijuana that marijuana has any negative effects. I wanted to also mention this. Fox News reports the New York Times editorial board walked back some of its previous stances on marijuana legalization and the drug's potential for addiction in a Monday editorial titled, "It's time for America to admit that it has a marijuana problem." The editorial board noted that it has long supported marijuana legalization, even published a 6-part series comparing the federal ban on marijuana to the prohibition of alcohol, advocating for the ban to be repealed. The Times wrote, "Much of what we wrote then holds up, but not all of it does. At the time, supporters of legalization predicted that it would bring few downsides. In our editorials, we described marijuana addiction and dependence as relatively minor problems. Many advocates went further and claimed that marijuana was a harmless drug that might even bring net health benefits. They also said that legalization might not lead to greater use. Despite those prior claims, the Times argued that it is now clear that many of these predictions were wrong and that the legalization of the drug has led to much more use. Each year, nearly 2.8 million people in the United States suffer from cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which causes severe vomiting and stomach pain. More people have also ended up in hospitals with marijuana-linked paranoia and chronic psychotic disorders. Bystanders have also been hurt, including by people driving under the influence of pot. These are all things that they were arguing. And it's a good article. You should read it. I don't say this often, but the New York Times should be commended for this. I don't think they went far enough because they're saying that, well, we're not saying there should be a ban. I think there should be a ban, but they at least admit that they got some things wrong. And, I can't hold it against them for getting this wrong. I got it wrong, which I've admitted many times. I went through it much sooner, but I went through the same awakening process when it comes to this issue. I was in favor for a while. I was in favor of marijuana legalization, even though it doesn't benefit me. I don't smoke pot, but I was in favor of it because of all the libertarian arguments that I basically bought into. In particular, the argument that, hey, well, alcohol is already legal and it's so much worse in every way. So why not have, why should marijuana be singled out in this way? So I bought into that argument. But then, like the New York Times editorial board, I was forced to reevaluate when new information came in, which is what we should always do. And to be completely honest, it's not all new information, actually. I mean, there's new information because, well, once you do the thing and you legalize it, well, now we see what the impact is. We see what effect it actually has on society. It's not in the realm of theory anymore. Now it's, okay, like you support legalization because you say, well, it's not going to have this kind of impact, right? It will have no real impact, or it will be a positive impact. It's not going to have this negative impact. Well, then you do it, and now it's happened in enough places for long enough that we can look back and say, okay, well, who was right and who was wrong? And it turns out that the people who all along said it will have a very negative impact were right. And we can see that. But so that's the new information. But there's also been data about the harms of marijuana for decades now that was available for anyone who did enough research into it, which a lot of people, including myself, did not. So, the New York Times talks about a lot of the different dangers associated with pot use. It is addictive. You do see huge increases in people driving under the influence. Of course, people are getting killed because of that. You have things like, as they mentioned, these hyperemesis, these serious medical conditions that are associated with marijuana use. There's also the societal level issues, which we've talked about at length, the implications of having entire cities where everybody is walking around stoned all the time. Very bad for society. Basically no upside. And on the addiction side of it, by the way, according to some figures, including data compiled by Yale, 30% of marijuana users are addicted. And for alcohol, which weed smokers will say is so much worse, well, the addiction rates are lower. It's probably about a third of that. So most estimates say that like 8 to 12%, 13%, 15% at most of alcohol drinkers are alcoholic. But I want to focus for a moment on something the article mentions kind of briefly, which is, and Brett Cooper posted about this yesterday, talking about her family's experience, and she was pilloried, torn to shreds by the potheads, even though she's 100% right. And that is the link between marijuana use and psychosis. And here's the thing about that. And you really need to understand this if you're a pot smoker. The link between marijuana use and psychosis is very, very strong. It is very well documented. This is not like, one study 20 years ago indicated that maybe there's some kind of correlation. It's not that. This is not some obscure theory. This is something that's been demonstrated scientifically many times. I mean, it's real. It just is. So you've got experimental studies over the past 40 years from the 90s all the way to today. I found 3, at least, showing that marijuana use can induce paranoia, hallucinations, other psychotic symptoms. You've got longitudinal studies, which mean that these are studies that track data over a long period of time. There's a Danish study, a Swedish study, there's a study out of Australia, a Canadian study, all separate, showing this link. And these are studies, the Swedish study was done, it was a 15-year period, which included 50,000 heavy cannabis users. And it showed a several-fold increase in schizophrenia risk because of marijuana. There's been research looking at genetics, whether some marijuana users are genetically more vulnerable to the psychosis risk. And the answer is yes, some of them are. You've got reviews by the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the CDC concluding that there is consistent evidence linking cannabis use to psychosis. You've got analysis in various European countries showing that indeed, it's like, well, we've got all these studies showing this link. If all of that is true, then we should be able to look at places that have legalized marijuana and marijuana use has increased, and we should notice that also the rate of psychotic disorders increases as well. And what do you know? That's exactly what we find. So you have studies that are small scale, studies that are medium scale, large scale. You have research focused on small groups and short periods of time, large groups over long periods of time. You have research looking at correlation at the population level, research looking at causation all the way down to the genetic level. You have research with predictive, you have a theory here, right? The theory is that marijuana use can cause psychosis, psychiatric conditions. That's the theory. Well, if it's a valid theory, it should have predictive power, right? That's what any valid theory has, predictive power. It means that, well, here's what's happening, and here's my theory. And if my theory is true, then when I look at what's actually going on in the real world, I should see X, Y, Z. And this theory has predictive power. Because then when you look at what's happening in the real world, you find exactly that. Like the theory would predict, if this is true, it predicts that as marijuana use increases in a population, psychotic disorders also increase. And that is exactly what we observe in reality. So this is very thorough, and there is a lot of data here. And perhaps most importantly, all of this data comports with common sense. So it's not like you're being asked to accept something that makes no intuitive sense based on studies. No, it makes sense. Of course, a mind-altering substance, if used constantly every day, will have a deleterious effect on your mind. Of course it will. Of course it's harmful to your mind to take a mind-altering substance every day. That's exactly what, with common sense, you would expect that. And then what do you know? It's what you find. So, it's all right there. And here's the thing. I'll tell you the one thing on top of all this that makes weed so dangerous is that, and this I think also explains the high rate of addiction when you compare to things like alcohol. Well, with alcohol, everybody admits, everyone acknowledges with alcohol that it can be a dangerous substance and it can hurt you. Everyone admits that. You will not find anyone who will claim otherwise. I defy you to find a single person who will claim that there are no serious risks with alcohol. Now, you will find alcoholics who are in denial about their own consumption. They're in denial about their own habits. They'll say that, I don't have a problem. So they're in denial about that, but they won't deny that, well, yeah, like alcoholism exists. Yeah, other people have a problem with it. Yeah, it can hurt you if you drink too much, but I don't drink too much. So that's a level of denial, but it's different from the denial you find with potheads, with weed smokers. Because for them, they are also personally in denial about their own consumption. I don't have a problem. Yeah, I smoke every day. Yeah, I'm high every single day, but I don't have a problem. There's that denial, but also there is a blanket denial among advocates of marijuana that marijuana has any negative effects. I mean, marijuana users have this like superstitious, almost religious faith in the substance. They think it's the one mind-altering drug in existence that you can take as much as you want and it will not harm you at all. It will have no health impact at all. Unless it's a positive impact, maybe. So that's the kind of denial you have with marijuana, and I think that makes it even more dangerous. Because then you have a lot of people that think like, yeah, I can get high every day, all day, and it will not hurt me. They really do believe that. Nobody believes that you can drink all day, every day, and not be hurt by it. There are people who have that habit, and it's really bad, but no one really believes that you can just do that and you'll be fine. With marijuana, I think like millions of people believe that. They really believe it. Look at the comments under this video. You're going to see some of them. And I think that contributes to the problem.